Woo! We are live. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So again, thank you all for joining this first Twigeo talk of the year. We at Twigeo can help your company to maximize your growth. And growth is an interesting topic, especially now when it's a new year. Like when it's a new year, it's usually time for new year, new me. We want to be stronger, we want to become faster, and we have these new goals set up for the year. And today we will give you all the tools, or at least or some tools, I would say, to kickstart 2023 so you can grow your performance marketing efforts. And to kick off the first Twigeo talk, I'm going to leave it over to my colleague Eric, who are the head of our analytics team. So, Eric, please take it away and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Karen. And hi, everyone. Good morning, or mainly good afternoon and good morning to some of you. My name is Eric. I'm analytics director here at Twigeo, and I've been at the company for 4+ years now. And over these years, I've been helping our clients like Duolingo, Peloton, and Viaplay to improve their measurement and future-proof their measurement strategy and measurement stack. So this is a topic I'm quite passionate and familiar with. So this is what I'm going to talk about with all of you right now. Please ask any questions in the chat during this talk if you have any questions for us. But with that, I want to start up with some background to why we even should care about all of this. So a little bit of background here. I guess most of you in this call is aware of that there has been and there are happening a lot of changes across the way you measure and attribute your marketing plan. So this started roughly around 2018 with GDPR in Europe, followed by CCPA in California, and that has then been continued by more private companies like mainly Apple, who enforced when iOS 14.5 and the ATT prompt became live in April in 21. And then we have a lot of things coming in the coming this year and next year, where we have the big one is the third-party cookie deprecation that will happen on the Chrome browsers. And also we have the sandbox for Android. So these two forces, we have both the regulatory forces, and then we have the platforms like Apple and Google who are pushing us towards this very uncomfortable and unknown future. So if you follow the industry, it can sometimes be like this, where a lot of industry blogs are saying like digital marketing is dead, it's over. If you look at the Meta and Snapchat, among other stock prices, they're just going down and down, which makes people think that it's not worth doing advertising on these platforms anymore. We, though, at Twigeo think this is a very pessimistic and over-exaggerated view. Instead, we actually believe the future is quite bright. So this, for us, is a way to build something new and something better than what we used to have when it comes to marketing measurement. I want to drive this point home using Mona Lisa. So if we look at this picture here, the first one, we see Mona Lisa. It's quite clear, but it's still a little bit blurred. And this is the old way we used to live in before GDPR, before Apple released their ATT prompt, and before these ad blockers and third-party cookie blockers were introduced. We see this is a little bit blurred because it was quite good, but it was actually not perfect, and a lot of different systems and networks, they looked at and attributed conversions in a different way. But if we look at the picture in the middle here, this is what is happening if you don't do anything. This is probably how, if we have any app advertisers or app marketers in the room, this is probably how you felt 1.5 years ago when Apple released their privacy changes on iOS. And this is definitely not a great place to be at all. But what we at Twigeo have developed over the last years is this what we used to call are calling future-proof measurement. And what we can do with this is to get this clear and full picture that we believe is even better than what we used to have back before all these changes happened. So let's talk a little bit about what this is. Around 2 years ago, or I would say almost 3 years now, we started looking into how to do measurement and effective digital marketing when these changes would happen, because we saw that this was just a matter of time when this would happen. We started looking into different solutions and tools, and unfortunately, we didn't find one silver bullet or one thing that actually solved all our problems, but instead we have landed on 3 different tools, and then all them 3 together create what we call the future-proof measurement. So what's so great with this approach is that it's privacy safe. So we do not depend on what Apple decides to do tomorrow, what Google decides to do, or what the European privacy regulators or the American counterparts are deciding to do. It's also optimized for true impact or incrementality. So instead of looking at how can we attribute as many conversions, we're trying to understand which channel, which platforms actually make or drive the results we're looking for. And lastly, this approach unifies everything so that your accounting or finance team, your CMO, and your team all look at the same data. So you have everyone looks at the same data and agrees on one single source of truth. So we have these 3. I will obviously go into all of these 3 in detail right away. So we're going to start with the first one, which is the kind of tracking-based measurement. This is probably what you're familiar with today. So we have a lot of different MarTech platforms, a lot of ad networks. So we have, if your product is mainly on the web, we have the Google Analytics, we have Segment, we have maybe you use Mixpanel Amplitude. If you're an app client, you probably use an MMP like AppsFlyer, Adjust, or Branch. So use these tools. They also have the ad networks, Facebook, the Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Trade Desk, etc., etc. So these tools are still going to be valuable in the future, but they have, as you are aware of, been hit very heavily by the regulators and Apple specifically. So we still need and leverage these signals from these different sources today and in the future, especially when we look at, for example, which creatives are working, which audience are we serving ads to. We want to understand how things are trending on a week-to-week basis, so very short term. The data from these sources are still very valuable, but and the key here is also to stay up to date with the latest developments around the SCAD network, around Google's privacy sandbox, etc., etc. But these tools are very important for feeding the algorithms, but where they are struggling today and will do even more in the future is when it comes to measurement. So these solutions have become very blurred, as we see in this image. So for actually understanding which channels actually work and how effective they are, we need to leverage something else instead. So let's get right into that and see how bad or how inaccurate could these sources actually be. So to understand that, we had looked at one specific meta study. There's multiple of these across the web, but according to this meta study, roughly 25% of the campaign decisions based on these kind of ID-based trackers are incorrect. So in plain language, that means that a quarter of your marketing budget could be misallocated if you only look at what the ad networks or the measurement partners tell you. So then the question is, of course, how do we understand the true value of our different channels? To do that, we at Twigeo have found that geo-based uplift studies is one of the very best ways to do this. I can talk for hours how this works in detail, and we have developed a special sauce here at Twigeo, but on a very simplified basis, it's it's like maybe you run a brand lift study before, but it's basically you take a country, let's take the US for this example. We group the US based on cities or regions or states. Some cities see our ads and some other cities will not see our ads. What we then do is to compare the total volume or total conversion volume between these two groups and understand what the true or what the causal impact were of our ads. So we've been running over, I think it's close to 30 of these last year in 2022 for clients across most verticals, app, web, everything. And I'm going to show you two examples of this in the next slide. But I want to highlight that we're using this to understand the true value of any channel like Meta, Google, TikTok, connected TV. You can do this across awareness plays or more conversion campaigns. So it works for basically everything or anything you can think of. So I'm going to quickly show you two examples. Where the first one are coming from a test we did on Facebook. So one of our e-commerce brand we work with on Facebook, we did a geo experiment where we were able to show that. So if you look at the left graph, the graph to the left here, we saw that Facebook reported that the ROAS of these, so return on ad spend for these campaigns we were running, were 220%. But in reality, by doing a geo experiment alongside this campaign, we were able to understand that actually the true return on ad spend was 300%, which in our client's case, this was the difference between profitability and not. So based on this data point, they were able and confident to continue running ads on Meta, even though the platform told them that they were not profitable. This gave them enough confidence to continue to invest on that platform. I also want to go on the other end, where the geo experiments told us something else, where the graph to the right here, we looked at one of our clients who run a lot of Google search, and we had the suspicion that Google were most likely over attributing or cannibalizing on organic growth. That would have happened anyways. So we ran this experiment and were able to prove that that was the case, but it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. So the geo experiments were able to tell us that 6 out of 10 sales were incremental or actually driven by our Google search campaigns. So even though not everything Google said was driven by this campaign, was actually driven by the campaign, still 6 out of 10 were. So this is a great way to understand how efficient the channel is and if you should continue running that campaign or not. So I went through 2 different solutions. We have the tracking-based one, and then we have the kind of incrementality uplift approach. But we need a third. We basically need a third tool here in our toolbox, which will be very clear in this image. So we know that these kind of geo experiment or uplift studies, they are extremely good at telling you what the value of a certain campaign or a certain ad network, even a combination of them. But the problem with these experiments is that they are just a measurement of a certain time period and for a certain channel. What we can't do with the geo experiment is to see the full picture, so the whole elephant in this example. So to do that, we need to leverage our third tool, which is MMM, media mix modeling, whatever you want to call it. It has a lot of different names. This solution, we actually teamed up with Meta in 2021, so roughly 2 years ago, to develop something together with them. So they helped us get this kind of off the ground. But in the last, I would say, 1.5 years, we have been taking what we liked with their approach and then improved upon this and created our own version of this, which we are currently using for multiple of our clients with quite a great success. So how this works, it's 3 steps. The first one is that we take inputs here, and this is based on your data. So every MMM is unique and depends on your specific data for your business. So we take everything, all the marketing spend across all your initiatives. It could be, of course, the paid media from Facebook, Google, TikTok, etc. But it's also everything you're doing maybe owned. So your organic social, it will be PR. Maybe there's some news articles. The offline media you're doing, maybe you're doing a lot of billboards or or just connected TV or just regular TV. And then we look also into if you do product changes, if you have a promo, or if there's external factors like COVID or just economic slowdown that we're seeing right now. All of these things we take as input, put it into our advanced modeling framework that is leveraging the latest in statistics and machine learning by our data science team. Then after that modeling, we then get the answers to understand, basically understand what drives the true business impact for your business. So what is the value of Facebook versus out of home versus owned media through PR, for example. So we'll be able to tell you that and also understand how efficient those channels are. So we do this MMM, we present it, and then you will be able to see like where should I invest my money in the coming month, the coming quarter, or the coming year, to understand if you want to grow, which channel should I take money from and then move to channels that has more potential, or if you want to go more towards the profitability route, which channels are actually not efficient and we should just drop the budget and get rid of that to save money. So some examples for a few of the bigger brands we work with and do this for, we've been able to save over 10% of their marketing budget without 0 to none impact on sales and revenue. So I'm gonna end this with just a short summary. To put it all together, we need to leverage these tracking-based measurement, the kind of MarTech or publisher tools you have today. These are crucial for creative and audience insights. We need these to do optimization and reporting, and of course to feed these ad algorithms to make sure that they know which users they should target. Then to validate these numbers we get on a daily and weekly basis, we run these geo-based conversion uplift studies to understand the true value of a certain channel, and then also validate these tracking-based measurements. And then finally, we go with the big guns with the MMM, where we look at everything from a very top-level holistic view to understand big strategy moves, understand the budget planning and budget allocation for a little bit more long-term, so a monthly or quarterly or even yearly basis. So all these tools together kind of create this beautiful Mona Lisa that gives you the full picture that we think every marketer needs and deserves. So with that, I'm gonna quickly soon hand it over to Naiara. So she's gonna talk all about creatives, if that's what you are here for and not listening to me. But before that, I want to see if there's any Q&As or any questions that I can help answer. I guess not. Thank you. Perfect. Naiara, I'm going to hand it over to you then.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Just a second. There we go. Yes, you'll see my screen now, right? Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Naiara, and as Eric just mentioned, I'm going to be talking about creatives, which is something I'm really, really passionate about. To briefly introduce myself, I can say that I'm head of creatives at Twigeo. I've been working in this company for almost 6 years, and I mentor and lead a team of global creatives spread between our Stockholm and our New York office. My background is mainly in marketing design and creative strategy, and I have the experience of in-house and agency kind of point of view, so I can understand both sides of the game. When I joined Twigeo, since I joined Twigeo, I've been actively working with clients like Strava, Dropbox, or Klarna, to name a few. But enough about me. We have heard now what's coming on the analytics side, so let's have a look at the status of creatives then. And before we even start, I just want to set this stage and be able to highlight the importance of creatives in today's marketing landscape. And to do that, I'm going to be sharing the results of a recent study conducted by Meta that states that up to 56% of a brand's sales lift from digital advertising can be attributed to a high-quality creative. That is a crazy number, right? But it's also very important to know that we are more distracted than ever. And we thumb through around 380 meters of content on a daily basis. So how can we grab the attention of such an overstimulated audience? Well, the answer is with a powerful hook. The first 3 seconds of our ads is what is going to determine our success. And I know it sounds like a wild bet, but there is some good news behind. And the good news is that people who watch up to 3 seconds of the ad we have created, they will create up to 47% of the total campaign value. And I guess after knowing this, the million-dollar question is then, all right, so how do we crack the sweet spot between creativity and performance, right? And this is a very tough question to answer in just a slide. So let me go back and start from the beginning. And if you look closely, every successful campaign, every unlocked audience, or every giant performance leap, at the end of the day, they all start with one thing, and that is ideas. It is that simple at the end, right? I mean, we can work with optimization, with tactics, with measurement, but without the idea and the strategy behind it, we're very likely going to fail, at least on the long run. And the truth is, this wasn't always like that, though. For example, when I joined Twigeo almost 6 years ago, as I mentioned before, we had a lot of precision in the tracking, as Eric was saying, and the targeting. So there were basically no regulations back then, and that allowed us to be a bit more careless, if you wish, with all the ingredients needed for marketing success. But since then, and year after year, there has been changes in the industry that have decreased that precision. There's limitations in the data, like the before mentioned iOS 14.5 release, and many others that follow and will follow, because everything indicates this is going to continue in that direction. Meaning that the business is more and more about creatives and less about marketing tactics. So we need to get back to basics and understand, all right, so how do we keep on delivering past those regulations? And we will do that through delivering creative strategy. No matter how good our ideas are, how incredible our execution, or how nitty-gritty our optimization, without a powerful and comprehensive strategy behind, we will have nothing. And therefore, I'm very happy that I can paraphrase this incredible Pirelli ad that you guys can see and say instead, in the marketing world, creativity is nothing without a strategy. With that said, let's get back to this million-dollar question again. Okay, let's ask ourselves again, how can we crack the sweet spot between creativity and performance then? And some of you maybe are thinking the obvious, and it's like, I guess, of course, creative winners, right? But what is a creative winner? Well, the definition of a creative winner differs a lot depending on when you ask that question. If you will have asked that question in the past, marketing success was measured back then by sticking to budgets and winning creative awards. However, nowadays creative winners are made by measuring data and adjusting strategies in real time to try to find those creatives that perform the best towards the chosen KPIs. So what's the main challenge for us working in marketing nowadays? Well, it is this heartbreaking thing that we are not getting enough winners most of the time. Most of the times we get stuck in those iterative processes and we are unable to surpass the mark. And the truth is also, most people think about creativity as an end product, right? As the presentation or the style or the form of what we deliver. And I think that few people consider the importance of creativity as a process and not just the final delivery. So in order to be able to understand and beat the challenge, we need to put in place an adequate framework that can help us solve the problem. And that framework is the process that is going to enable us to extract those creative learnings that we need in order to get new creative winners. But of course, as all frameworks and processes, they are not pain-free. And now I'm going to enumerate some of the main pain points of having these processes, or being able to apply them in a painless way, so to say. The first one is to reconsider your creative processes, the ideation, testing, and production. Secondly, you need to focus on the marketing and creative team collaboration and alignment. Those two teams need to talk to each other. They need to understand each other and challenge each other. So it's super important that they are connected. And a third point is to lower the threshold for wild creatives. And with that, I mean that decisions of approving or disapproving creatives or ideas shouldn't be based out of pure intuition. So let's put the framework in place now. And I'm going to be talking about the creative roadmaps. Creative roadmaps are very diverse, and there is not a one-size-fits-it-all approach. You can see some examples to the right of different roadmaps that we're using at Twigeo for different clients. These roadmaps, they can live in the tool of your choice, in Miro, FigJam, Figma, you name it. And they will vary a lot depending on your needs, on your client's needs, etc. On top of that, creative roadmaps also offer a very strong synergy between ideation, testing, and production, those creative processes we mentioned before. And I can also say that at Twigeo, we use these creative roadmaps for, first of all, blueprinting the strategic approach that we want to go for. So basically understanding what type of creative strategy suits us best after knowing, things like, okay, what are the challenges, the expected outcome, and especially the time constraints that we have when facing a project. Another thing we use it for is to outline upcoming ideas, so that both other teams internally at Twigeo, but also our clients understand what the new ideas are about, and they maybe can come back with feedback in good time. That also brings a lot of transparency between the teams, forcing that collaboration between creatives and GMs and marketers. And also they offer a lot of transparency and alignment client agency collaboration-wise. On the third point, we have to, we use them to align the product and delivery processes, meaning that it's very clear what's being produced and when it's being produced and when it's being delivered. And therefore, marketers can plan on launching things ahead of time. So once the creative roadmap is in place, it's time to learn, right? But before, we need to have a look at other ingredients needed for finding those creative winners easily. And one of those first points is to define your variables. With that, I mean, like, okay, whenever you are testing stuff, you need to be aware of test one variable at a time to be sure which factor is determining your creative success. Stay agile when testing, meaning you maybe should start with creative testing in images instead of video, so that you can, learn fast and then apply those learnings to maybe creatives that take a bit more time to tweak, like motion, animations, etc. And lastly, stay relevant with your variations. So make sure you keep your various creatives different enough to be able to learn. As a second thing, you need to define your hypothesis. So for example, here I'm using examples of one of our former clients, Kenco. And here my hypothesis is that, okay, I think that testimonial-based creatives perform best when the testimonial is isolated in the ad. I'm not sure whether my hypothesis is true or not. It's just a hunch. And in order to be able to prove it, I need to create a test that can help me bring home those answers, right? So in this case, I have decided that I'm going to test this testimonial only against product plus testimonial and against people plus testimonial. And at the end, it is really irrelevant if my hypothesis is right or wrong. What is relevant is that the result of this test will take me closer to my next creative winner. The final thing to consider is the network that you're going to use. So look at the audience, at the media consumption behavior, measurement options, available testing tools, the algorithm and the learning patterns that it has, and finally placements and formats. And now we will be ready to test. But also we want to avoid kind of starting from square one every time that we are going to test something, right? So let's see how we can speed up our learning curve and test a bit smarter. And we can do that by looking at some of the best practices in order to learn faster and try to get that speed. So for example, the first thing that we have done here is looking at the anatomy of your winning ads. In this case, we're using this ad for Rise, another of our former client, an energy and sleep tracking app. And we have dissected it to understand, okay, what does matter in this ad. So we start with an eye-catching imagery. We follow by a bold copy that leaves a lot of room for interpretation that actually generated a ton of engagement. Then the credibility is added through showing that they are a legit brand available in the App Store. We then round it up with a clarification copy, tying back to the main copy and kind of explaining a bit more what the app is about. And finally, we have a branding element that is there for easy recognition, and it's also reinforcing that the product is an app. Consideration number 2 is creative diversity. So make sure you use the power of creative diversity. I know that user-generated content ads are really trending hard nowadays, However, I wouldn't advise you to put all your eggs in one basket. Diversifying will prevent you from failure. So here I just provide, for example, of what creative diversity can look like, but of course is much, much bigger than this. So always keep that in mind. Never, play all your cards to one horse, basically. And the third point is optimizing for all placements. So again, here's an example on how we work around placement and format diversity for another of our clients, Coffee Meets Bagel, a dating app. What is interesting, I think, here is that you can see how we optimize for each placement, not only size-wise, but also message and content-wise. So a good tip here is to use placements to their full capacity and adapt the creative as needed. So think big when you are optimizing for placements. And as a last ingredient for success, what is important is to look at what's trending in the world, right? So what is important for people right here, right now. And here I'm going to talk about two main trends that we're seeing, and I'm going to use our client Duolingo to visualize what I mean. The first one, as the first trend that you see here, is elevating user-generated content, also known as UGC. We have talked about it just before, and we know that UGC is trending, and that's something you shouldn't ignore in your creative strategy. But be aware that apps are kind of hard to convey in a UGC video, so don't forget to show it as much as possible. And the second trend, something that is very connected to UGC, and is also very connected to the eruption of new social channels like TikTok in the former years. It is to be real. Like the audience is really thirsty for authenticity. They don't want to see another ad that looks like an ad. They want to be the center of the story, and they want to see the real implication of the product they are about to buy. So we have really seen up to, as I write there, up to a 50% of CPI improvement when using this strategy. So I would recommend you to look at it and not miss out on the possibilities it gives you. And I'm going to stop right here now, and I want to use the last minutes to do a bit of a recap before we open up for questions. And the recap is, first of all, the hook. Make sure you design your ads so that they grab the audience attention in the first 3 seconds. If you are able to do that, you are really on the good path. Secondly, the framework. So work with creative roadmaps, have a purposeful creative process in place, and try to get your teams to collaborate. And lastly, take advantage of trends and best practices, diversify your content, and optimize for all placements. And before we move on to my colleague Stefanie, that is going to talk about ASO, I will just stop presenting now and leave some time for questions if you guys have any. Yes.
Yeah, so I've seen some hooks that are completely unrelated to the content, and it's like one example is it was, I think, an app for exercise, and the intro hook was just an egg cracking, which was very distracting and interesting. But do you know anything about whether the hook needs to be related, and if the hook is completely unrelated, does that lead to like a lower click-through rate?
I mean, I think like probably not to a lower click-through rate, but if the hook is very misleading, maybe it could lead to like a lower downloads, for example, or like people really not trusting your ads anymore. So I will be careful with that. However, it's always good to try how far you can go and use your own judgment to understand whether what you are proposing in your ad is actually connected to what you're trying, to the product that you have behind. Or because I think like what is important with the hooks is that it shouldn't only be about catching the attention randomly. It should also get the connection with the product. But then how creative you getting that connection, then I guess it's up to you and the team's creativity.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Then I guess I'll pass it over to you, Stefanie.
Great, thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see? Yes, great. Okay, so hi, I'm Stefanie, a senior app marketing manager here at Twigeo. I've been with Twigeo for 4 years now, and before I started working with App Store optimization this last year, I worked on the growth marketing side with a range of clients. Right now, I'm primarily working with Viaplay. So now that you've heard about future-proof measurement and creatives, we're going to tie it all together with App Store optimization, or ASO, and how that fits into this puzzle. When we talk about ASO, we say it's the process of improving an app's visibility in an app store in order to maximize its appeal to users with the objective of increasing the amount of total downloads. When we take a look back at the history of ASO, it is usually revolved around keyword optimization, creatives, and getting your app featured. But what we foresee being a big trend in 2023 is personalization of an app's landing page. We'll get to that in a bit, though. Earlier, Nida mentioned the importance of grabbing the attention of users very quickly. This also applies to ASO, where the average user spends about 3 to 6 seconds to decide if they want to download your app or not. In the search results, the first 3 to 4 screenshots are visible and therefore the most vital in highlighting your app's unique selling points to quickly grab the user's attention. And as for an app's landing page on the App Store, only 1.5 screenshots are visible, making highlighting this very early on even more crucial. A good thing to always keep in mind is that all of your app marketing efforts lead to your app's landing page, whether it's from YouTube or Meta or TikTok, for example. How do we then incentivize users to make a quick decision to download an app? It comes down to testing. So testing on the App Store is a crucial part of understanding what works for your app in terms of creatives, tying back to what Nida said. We can do this a few ways, either through the platform's own A/B testing tools, or just as a regular update together with a sequential analysis later on. Initially for an app, we set up an ideation workshop where we brainstorm and explore ideas of what to test together. These ideas are then put into a prioritization framework. When we have a list of prioritized ideas set, the ideas are put into an ASO creative roadmap, very similar to the creative roadmap and framework that Nida presented earlier. We then move forward with the production of creatives, where we follow industry best practices, as well as learnings from previous A/B tests we've already done. Another trend that we expect to see more of in 2023 is the alignment between marketing and ASO efforts. By aligning marketing and ASO, we improve the experience of the entire acquisition funnel, which means meeting users' expectations when clicking on an ad. This can be done by aligning creative elements in your best performing ads with your screenshots or brand guidelines such as colors or font styles. Another reason we work with this is to understand what performs better for specific traffic sources. One way of working with marketing and ASO alignment can be done through custom product pages. We also commonly refer to these as CPPs. It's a recent feature launched by Apple. How can CPPs improve relevance, you may ask? Well, CPPs allow you to showcase different features for different users to create a personalized experience. This loops back to the evolution timeline slide we looked at in the beginning. In this case, the mountain climber default landing page showcases screenshots targeted just to rock climbers. But if they would like to target users interested in bike trails, they can create a CPP. All CPPs are connected to unique URLs that can be used by your Apple search ads or meta ads. They could also create a custom product page for users interested in backcountry trails, as seen here. This is also a great way to test what screenshots perform better for your app, and by doing this, also further extend your A/B testing strategy. Since CPPs were launched on the App Store, the industry benchmark measures a 10 to 15% increase in conversion rates. But we've actually seen higher performance improvements than this with our clients. In this example for Rise Science, the same app as Nida previously showed an example of, we designed a CPP for Apple search ads and could see a 19% increase in conversions when the landing page showcased screenshots of their popular sleep tracker feature. So just to recap everything with ASO, you want to incentivize users to make a quick decision to download your app, align your efforts between marketing and ASO to make them seamless, and also create a more personalized or individualized experience through custom product pages. And that is it. Any questions for me? No questions? Okay, then I'll hand it back to Kalle.
Thank you, Stefanie. Thank you, Naiara. And thank you, Eric. And also thank you, all of you who tuned in to this first Twigeo talk. We will be hosting a new one in a month. And we will also send you a follow-up by email where we get some of the highlights from this first Twigeo talk. So with that said, we wish you a lovely day, a lovely evening, and thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye. See you later.